Alright, so ever since the announcement of a Part 2 remaster for The Last of Us has been, well, announced, people have been really excited to see what the no-return roguelike mode is going to be like, especially in the wake of factions not being a part of Part 2 like people were anticipating. People have been dying for a mode like this to be able to get their hands on, and because the announced factions game is taking a while, this is looking like all we have until they let us know more about what's going on with The Last of Us faction. So, the first reviews for this roguelike no return mode are out, and people have been able to get their first impressions, and so I kind of wanted to dive into it with you guys and let you know what people are experiencing. So let's dive right into it. So first off, and most importantly, gameplay. It's a ton of fun. Of course, if you've played The Last of Us Part 2, you know what the gameplay is like for the most part, what it feels like to fight enemies. It's a blast. It really is fun. The Naughty Dog did a great job developing a game that is a ton of fun, that the shooting and the combat and the stealth all really work, and they again work here in the no return mode. And on top of that, there's apparently lots of extras that a lot of reviewers thought that initially this would seem like kind of slapped together by Naughty Dog and something that they would have put minimal effort into, but actually upon playing it, they're like, oh, they actually put in like a ton of effort. Like this is actually like a proper roguelike kind of mode. It's not just bare bones basic, that they put in a lot of different mods, different experiences, multiple different kind of game modes, and all these different customizable stuff that you can do that actually make this thing really in depth. And there's a lot of characters that you can pick from, and so there's actually a vast amount of gameplay here, surprisingly. And even when it releases, there's going to be a daily no return, that every day you're going to get kind of like a new wave that you can go through and you can try for the day, which I think is a really cool idea because it gives you an incentive to kind of log in every day and go through that run. It's kind of like Wordle, but for killing clickers and people. So it's essentially what it's like. Where instead of hopping into Wordle to do the word of the day, you're going to hop into Last of Us Part 2 Remastered to do the no return of the day. And that's actually genuinely a really cool idea. The only thing I wish it had was multiplayer. It'd be so cool to be able to partner with even one other friend and go through waves together, or even do couch co-op kind of thing. But of course, we're living in a single player world, so that's not here yet. But it's interesting to look at this and look at the footage and be like, huh, I could see how they're going to use some of this stuff in the new factions game. But then another thing that's really great that I want to highlight is just the depth, whether it's the costumes or the mods or whatever, that there's a ton of different depth, that you can have random spore clouds fall from the sky, that you can have enemies drop a pipe bomb every time they die, that you can have all these different things and different color coding, different enemies, different boss battles, that the amount of effort they went into customizing this experience and letting you be able to really play with it is cool. And the cool thing is that the reviewers have only been able to look at 2 of the game modes. So there's one mode that's just like straight up survival, so you're just being like, it's kind of like Call of Duty Zombies, where you just get waves of enemies and you're supposed to survive them for a certain amount of time, and that's that mode. And then you have another mode that's like, you have 3 waves of enemies, they're each going to get harder, you need to survive through it. And so those are kind of the 2 different modes they got to play, but there are more that they didn't let them play. And so I'm curious to see what other depth there is to this, and even how different characters have different benefits, where if you start out as Abby, her being more of like a brute force gives you that kind of a skill tree where you have skill trees you can upgrade. And if you, for example, start out as like Ellie, she more is trying to play the distance, and so you get rifles earlier than Abby does. Or if you're like Lev, you start off with a bow, and so you're more stealthy, etc., which is really cool because it gives each character personality in the game. That it's not just like a skin that you put on somebody, but it's actually like a real character. And just like how their characters would have benefits to them going through something like this, you'll kind of feel that in this gameplay. And so that's really cool. That just the amount of depth and energy they put into this thing is great. It's not just a bare bones, let's just pump it out to get it out there to have people not complain about us remastering this game. That's actually something they put a lot of time and effort into, and that's super encouraging. But then something like this is meaningless if it's not replayable. That if you're like, okay, it's got some depth and the gameplay's fun, but it gets boring after like an hour, that's not really ideal. And the good news is that is not the case. that reviewers have said that, hey, this was actually like a ton of fun. Like, I could see people putting a ton of hours into this thing and really enjoying it. And to me, that's huge because I'm a big fan of factions. It's honestly my favorite multiplayer experience. I have yet to experience a game where it really feels like you're a team working together like that game does. And so when I saw this no return mode, I got excited because I've been waiting for that Factions 2. I've been dying for it, actually. And I was like, oh man, this really feels like it has the potential to satisfy my Factions 2 craving a little bit and to be able to put a lot of hours into this thing. And it sounds like that is the case, that there is a ton of replayability, that this thing doesn't get old right away, that actually you can pour a lot of hours into this thing and really find a ton of fun. And that's exciting because I've been putting my hours into Factions for years, and so to be able to have another option like this is really cool. Also, just because the combat in part 2 was so much fun, that to be able to jump into encounters that aren't just the same encounters I've played through in the gameplay is exciting. That you kind of get a fresh experience every time, and that's a cool thing. And it'll be interesting to see how much life Naughty Dog gives us, if they will just release what is there and not really send out updates except for that daily no return, or if they're going to continue to add game modes, add depth, add more characters. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with this, and if they just leave it or if they release more. But at the very least, I really do think this is giving us a taste for where Factions 2 is headed, and that's exciting because so far what we've seen is really great. And if they can take these elements and put them into a big online multiplayer experience, that gets me really excited. And so everything we're hearing sounds great. But with that being said, I want to know what you guys think. So head down to the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts. Are you excited for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered? Are you excited to get your hands on this no return mode? Are you enjoying what you're hearing from the critics? Are you like, oh, this sounds really good? Were you someone who was skeptical about this, but now you're like, I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic? Were you someone who was excited and now is even more excited? Or were you someone who was pessimistic and is still pessimistic? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that junk. And I will see you guys in the next one.